My house was alive that evening, filled with laughter that rolled through every room like music I had composed myself. The dining table overflowed with roasted lamb, fresh bread, and pies cooling on the counter, their cinnamon scent wrapping around everyone like a hug. I moved between my guests, pouring wine, sharing quick jokes, and soaking in their smiles. At the head of the table, David sat tall, raising his glass as though he were the king of this little kingdom we had built. To anyone looking in, we were the picture of harmony. And for a moment, I let myself believe it too. I glanced at my nieces giggling in the corner, at my brother carving meat with all the drama of a stage actor, and I felt my chest swell with pride. This was my doing, this joy, this sense of home. I had created a space where everyone felt safe, where love lingered in the air like perfume. David leaned back in his chair, one hand lazily around his glass, his smile easy, convincing. I admired him then, remembering the storms we had endured together. For a fleeting heartbeat, I thought we were untouchable. But shadows play tricks under candlelight, don't they? Even as I laughed, some small part of me felt an unease tugging quietly at the corners of my joy. I noticed the way David's eyes flickered toward the door more than once, and I felt my pulse quicken without reason. I told myself not to overthink, not to ruin the night with doubts I couldn't name. After all, what is a celebration without love? Still, as I refilled a glass of wine, I couldn't shake the strange heaviness in the air, as if the night itself was holding its breath. I walked around the table, brushing crumbs from the tablecloth, laughing at the silly things my uncle said. The clink of glasses and the rhythm of voices blended into a melody of comfort. I loved the way these nights brought everyone together, reminding me of my childhood when family meant everything. Hosting filled me with a sense of purpose, a reminder that I still mattered, even if daily life sometimes made me feel invisible. Tonight, I wasn't just Clara. I was the glue holding everyone close. And in that role, I felt alive. Every now and then, my eyes returned to David. He told stories, making people laugh, his charm effortless. He looked every bit the man I thought I married, the partner I believed had my back. The way he raised his glass toward me, smiling as if we shared a secret only we knew, almost made my heart ache with gratitude. Almost. Because deep down, in some quiet, unlit corner of my soul, I wondered if what I saw was real, or just a mask he had perfected over the years. Still, I smiled back, refusing to let doubt stain the evening. I wanted to hold on to this warmth, to the feeling of belonging that wrapped around me like a blanket on a cold night. My friends had always teased me, saying I spoiled my family, but I never cared. Seeing everyone gathered, happy and safe under my roof, was worth every effort. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Yet, as the laughter swelled around me, I swear I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet, as if something was already on its way to change everything. I leaned against the doorway for a moment, watching everyone with a quiet smile. The kids were chasing each other, their laughter bubbling like champagne, while the older ones argued playfully about politics. The whole scene warmed me, like a photograph I'd want to frame forever. I thought, this is it. This is what happiness looks like. My chest tightened with gratitude, but also with something else I couldn't quite name. It was as if my body knew a truth my mind wasn't ready to face. David caught my gaze from across the room, and for a split second, his expression slipped. He looked uneasy, as though carrying a secret he couldn't put down. I blinked, and just like that, the charming mask was back, his laugh loud enough to fill the silence. I told myself not to dwell on it, but the image clung to me like a stubborn shadow. I wanted to believe the story we were living, the marriage everyone admired. But sometimes, belief is nothing more than a fragile veil stretched over reality. As I refilled my glass, I felt a strange chill, though the room was warm. A fleeting thought crossed my mind: how quickly life can change, how easily a single moment can undo years of certainty. I brushed it away, forcing myself to return to the laughter, to the celebration I had worked so hard to create. Little did I know, the very thing that would shatter this night was already making its way to my front door, waiting for the perfect moment to arrive. The doorbell rang just as my brother finished telling one of his outrageous stories, and for a moment, the sound felt almost out of place in all that joy. I wiped my hands on a napkin and started toward the hallway, still smiling, still floating on the warmth of the evening. When I opened the door, I expected another cousin running late or maybe a neighbor stopping by. Instead, a young woman stood there, her hair loose, her eyes sharp, holding the hand of a small boy who clung to her leg. My smile faltered. I didn't know her. The room behind me fell strangely quiet, as though the whole house had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. The little boy let go of the woman's hand and ran straight past me with such confidence, it was clear he knew where he was going. His tiny shoes tapped against the floor as he made his way to the dining room. Everyone's eyes followed him, curiosity knitting into confusion. My stomach tightened, though I couldn't yet understand why. The woman stayed by the doorway, her expression unreadable, almost daring me to stop her. Then it happened. The boy reached David, and with the innocence only a child could carry, he threw his arms around him and called out in a voice that pierced through every corner of the house. "Daddy!" The word echoed like a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading fast, pulling all the laughter down into silence. My breath caught in my throat, my world tipping sideways. David froze, his face pale, his fork slipping from his hand. In that single instant, I knew. Gasps rippled around the table, sharp and quick, like the crack of glass breaking. My aunt covered her mouth, my nieces clutched at each other, and even the children who had been laughing moments before stood frozen. I couldn't move. My body betrayed me, my legs heavy, my hands trembling against the back of a chair. The little boy pressed his cheek to David's chest, completely at ease, as if he had done it 100 times before. And David? Oh, David didn't push him away. He couldn't. I stared at him, waiting, praying, for some explanation to tumble out, something that would make sense of this nightmare. But all he did was stutter, his lips parting and closing, the color draining from his face. His eyes darted to mine, wide and pleading, but what plea could undo the truth that stood right in front of us? The woman stepped inside then, her heels clicking against the floor with a confidence that felt like an insult. She didn't need an invitation. She already owned the moment. Whispers started, spreading around the table like wildfire. Cousins leaned in, murmuring. My father's brow furrowed with disbelief. My mother shook her head, whispering a prayer under her breath. And I stood there, locked in place, as if the weight of every suspicion I had ever ignored came crashing down at once. The puzzle pieces I had brushed aside, the unexplained absences, the strange excuses, they all fit now. My heart stopped fighting the truth. The betrayal was undeniable, and it was standing in my living room. The woman finally spoke, her voice smooth and cutting, like a blade wrapped in silk. "I think it's time they all knew," she said, her gaze flicking from David to me, almost savoring the chaos she had unleashed. My knees threatened to give out, but I steadied myself, gripping the chair so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words lodged in my throat. The little boy looked up at David with eyes so trusting, so certain, and in that gaze, I saw everything I had been blind to. David reached out, his hand hovering near the boy's shoulder, but the hesitation in his movements betrayed him. He looked like a man cornered, stripped of all the lies he had so carefully spun. "Clara, I can explain," he stammered, but the sound of it only deepened the wound. Explain? How could any explanation erase the child calling him daddy in front of everyone we loved? My chest burned, but my face stayed frozen, because if I broke now, he would win twice. Once with his betrayal, and once with my collapse. The silence around us was deafening, broken only by the restless shifting of chairs, the whispers that thickened the air like smoke. My heart thundered, each beat a reminder of the humiliation searing into me, branded in front of my family. I forced myself to breathe, to stand tall, even as the ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. No tears, not yet. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. As I looked at David, pale and trembling, I knew one thing for certain. This night would not end with me as the victim. The room felt colder now, though the candles still burned and the fire still crackled. My relatives exchanged uneasy glances, their forks untouched, the once lively chatter gone. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, steady but relentless, like a drum announcing war. My hands trembled at my sides, but I held my chin high. I wouldn't fall apart in front of them, not here, not now. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting to see if I would break. David's lips moved again, fumbling with half-formed excuses. "Clara, listen, it's not what—" He couldn't finish. The boy clung tighter to him, small arms wrapped around his waist, and that single gesture said more than any words ever could. The woman smirked, her eyes locked on me as if daring me to collapse. A flicker of heat rose in my chest, a storm I kept hidden behind a mask of silence. My quiet was louder than any scream could ever be. Inside, though, I was burning alive. Rage, betrayal, humiliation. They tangled inside me like barbed wire, cutting deeper with every second. I wanted to scream, to throw the wine glass in my hand, to demand the world explain how it had betrayed me too. But instead, I stood still, my body frozen, my silence heavy. I knew then that words would come later, sharper and colder. For now, I let them underestimate me. For now, I let them think my silence was weakness. My mother reached for my hand under the table, her grip trembling, her eyes filled with questions she didn't dare ask. I couldn't look at her. If I did, I might shatter. Instead, I focused on the wine in my glass, swirling deep red circles that mirrored the rage boiling inside me. My family whispered, their voices low but sharp enough to sting. Each word seemed to slice through the silence, branding me with pity. And pity was something I refused to wear. David finally tried to stand, his chair scraping the floor, but even his posture betrayed him. He wasn't a man defending his honor. He was a coward cornered by the truth. "Please, Clara," he whispered, as though begging would erase the image burned into everyone's minds. The boy leaned against him, utterly unaware of the destruction he had just unleashed. And the woman? She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, smiling faintly like a conqueror surveying her victory. I clenched my jaw until it ached, every muscle in my body tight with the effort of restraint. My silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Let him sweat. Let her bask in her false triumph. They thought humiliation was the end of me, but I felt something different rising inside. It wasn't despair, it was resolve. I promised myself, right there, that this betrayal would not go unanswered. My storm hadn't broken yet, but when it did, it would tear everything apart. I forced myself to breathe slowly, letting the air fill my lungs, steadying the tremor in my hands. My silence became a shield, one even David couldn't penetrate with his desperate stammering. Every time he opened his mouth, the weight of the child at his side drowned him in guilt he couldn't hide. The family sat frozen, waiting for me to explode, waiting for the storm to break. But I gave them nothing. My restraint wasn't weakness, it was power. The woman finally broke the tension with her icy voice, slicing through the room like a knife. "We've been waiting too long for you to stop hiding us," she said, her words dripping with contempt. She wanted me to lash out, to unravel in front of everyone. I almost pitied her arrogance. She had no idea who she was provoking, no idea that the fire she lit inside me would burn her too. I didn't give her the scene she wanted. I gave her silence, and that silence terrified them both. Inside me, though, the storm was no longer contained. I could feel it building, pressing against my ribs, demanding release. Not now, I told myself. Not here. This wasn't the battlefield. This was the opening act. My mind was already moving beyond the shock, past the humiliation, towards something colder, sharper. I wasn't going to scream tonight. I was going to plan. And when I struck, neither of them would see it coming. The days that followed felt strangely quiet, almost deceptive, as if the world didn't know it had ended for me. I carried myself through each morning with the same routine: coffee brewing, dishes washed, phone calls answered, yet every action was laced with a new purpose. My silence at the dinner table hadn't been defeat, it had been the birth of resolve. While David paced around the house, Fumbling with excuses and apologies, I listened, I watched, and I planned. I began collecting pieces of his betrayal like a hunter laying traps. Bank statements tucked into drawers, transfers that led to her name, receipts for places he claimed he never went. I opened his phone when he slept, every vibration a breadcrumb leading me closer to the truth. Photos of the boy with his unmistakable smile, messages filled with promises David never gave me. Each discovery cut deep, but instead of wounding me, it sharpened me. Pain became my weapon. One afternoon, I sat in my lawyer's office, sliding the folder across the desk with hands that no longer trembled. She looked at me, brows raised, and then nodded. "You know what this means?" she asked softly. I nodded back, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "It means he won't just lose me," I said. "He'll lose everything he thought he could keep." The no infidelity clause was my secret key, and now it was in my hands, ready to unlock his ruin. David must have sensed the shift in me, because he started hovering around the house like a restless ghost. He begged, whispered apologies, tried to touch my hand as if closeness could undo the betrayal. But every word he spoke sounded hollow. Every touch felt like poison. "Clara, don't ruin everything," he pleaded once, his voice cracking. I almost laughed at the irony. I wasn't the one who had ruined anything. He had shattered it long before. Now I was simply picking up the pieces for myself. I watched him unravel, and the more he begged, the stronger I became. His desperation confirmed what I already knew. The man who once stood so proudly at my table was nothing but a coward hiding behind lies. Nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, going over my plan step by step. It wasn't rage that kept me up. It was clarity. Cold, deliberate clarity. I wasn't just walking away. I was making sure he felt the weight of every choice he made. The mistress thought she had won that night, striding into my home with her smug smile. But she didn't know the contract David signed on our wedding day, the one he probably forgot about, the one that would gut him now. Every receipt, every message, every hidden payment, I held it all in my hands. And the best part? He had given me the power without even realizing it. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to strike, and when I did, it would be final. I remember the night he finally dropped to his knees in the kitchen, his voice hoarse, his eyes wet. "Please, Clara, don't do this. Don't destroy me." For a second, I almost saw the man I once loved, the man who had held me through storms and whispered promises into my hair. But then I thought of that child calling him Daddy in front of my family, of the smug look on her face as she claimed him. My heart hardened. Compassion had no place here. I turned my back to him, my hands steady as I folded the last document into my folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper was louder than his begging, more powerful than his tears. I didn't answer him because there was nothing left to say. He had chosen his battlefield when he exposed me in front of everyone. Now, I was choosing mine. And unlike him, I didn't stumble. I prepared. I sharpened. I struck only when I was ready. By the time I closed that folder, my decision was sealed. This wasn't about revenge in whispers or petty games. It was about reclaiming my dignity and showing him what real consequences looked like. He had gambled on my silence, thinking it meant surrender. But silence can be the most dangerous weapon of all. And soon, in front of the same family that once saw me humiliated, they would see him fall. My storm was ready to break. The day I filed for divorce, the sky felt unusually bright, almost mocking, as if the world had no idea of the storm unfolding beneath it. I walked into the courthouse with my head high, folder tucked under my arm, every step a declaration that I was no longer the woman who stayed silent. David was already there, his face pale, his suit hanging loose on his frame as though even his clothes no longer believed in him. He couldn't look at me, and that, more than anything, felt like victory. The judge flipped through the documents, each page a nail in the coffin of David's carefully constructed facade. Photos of him with the child, receipts, messages, every lie laid bare, undeniable in black and white. My lawyer's voice was calm, steady, confident, while David stumbled and cracked, his defense collapsing before it even began. The room felt heavy with truth, and for once he had nowhere to hide. I sat there quietly, a picture of composure, while inside, I burned with justice. When the ruling came down, it was swift, almost merciless. The house, the assets, the financial control, all placed in my hands. The no infidelity clause had done its work. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The silence of the courtroom was enough, the weight of his defeat pressing down on every bowed inch of his body. I thought of that little boy, innocent in all this, and my heart ached briefly. But the mistress who had flaunted her victory? She was already gone, vanished once the money disappeared. Word spread quickly through the family. I didn't have to say a single thing. Everyone already knew why the marriage was ending. Cousins whispered, aunts called, even neighbors looked at David with the kind of pity that cuts deeper than anger. My humiliation had been public, yes, but now so was his downfall. And the best part? I never had to raise my voice. I let the truth do the speaking for me, and it was louder than any accusation I could have shouted. I carried myself with dignity, showing up at dinners and gatherings with my head high, refusing to shrink. People admired my composure, but only I knew the storm I had weathered to stand that way. They told me I was strong, that I had handled it better than they ever could. What they didn't see were the nights I sat alone, staring into the dark, stitching myself back together piece by piece. Strength isn't the absence of pain, it's surviving despite it. David, on the other hand, had nothing left to cling to. His mistress vanished as quickly as she'd appeared, leaving him without money, without family, without the mask he had worn so convincingly. I heard whispers of him drinking, of him stumbling through old haunts, trying to explain away his shame. But the truth was a stain he couldn't wash off, and I felt no need to gloat. His misery was his own doing, and watching him unravel from afar was justice enough. The memory of that boy calling him Daddy still echoes in me, sharp and haunting. For a long time, it felt like the word had ripped my life in half. But now I see it differently. It was the moment that freed me. That small voice, innocent and unknowing, forced the truth into the open. It gave me the clarity I had been too blind to claim for myself. Sometimes, pain arrives not to break you, but to deliver the key you didn't know you needed. I walk through my home now, the one I fought for and won, and everything feels lighter. The walls no longer carry his shadow. The air no longer tastes of lies. I pour myself a glass of wine at the same table where my world once collapsed, and instead of bitterness, I feel strength. I think of my family, of the way they look at me now, with respect, not pity. They saw me shamed, but they also saw me rise. And that is a legacy no betrayal can erase. I am not naive. I know scars remain, but I also know this. I am not broken. I am not small. I am not the woman he thought he could bury beneath his lies. I am the woman who walked away stronger, sharper, untouchable. His downfall will be the story people whisper for years, but mine will be the story of survival, of power reclaimed. And as I close this chapter, I step into the next, free, whole, and finally, unafraid.